Hey guys, and welcome to Travis's Musings video 2. Um, if you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and click the subscribe button below. That way you're not going to miss any of my future videos and whatnot. So today I'm going to divert a little bit from the topic we had last week, which was discussing my seasonal strategies for 2020. And we're going to talk about a topic that's a little more all-encompassing of the TSP in whole. And we're going to talk about how to use the how much will my savings grow calculator on TSP.gov. And we're going to learn that because it's a really useful tool for especially young feds and old feds, but mostly for young feds when you guys are really deciding how do I set myself up in retirement so that I'm able to enjoy life and whatnot, and not be having to work till you're 70 or 75 years old. Um, in addition to that, there's a couple other topics we're going to talk about that are in congruence with that. Number one is why the G fund sucks. I've made it my goal at my agency to try to show people uh, why they shouldn't be in the G fund long term, because for whatever reason, unfailingly across all departments, HR tells people, new hires, that the G fund is the safe fund, and that's where they should be if they want to make sure they retire with enough money. And I don't know who decided that that was a good idea to tell people, but I'll be showing you a little bit why that's a really terrible idea. Um, in addition to that, we're going to discuss why everyone is so obsessed with trying to beat the equities market, whether it be seasonal, a hybrid equity strategy, or a swing trading strategy. So we're going to talk about all that, and we're going to kind of show the differences on the market and what 1% will really do to your long-term account balance and whatnot. So before we dive into that, there was one other topic that has been coming up repeatedly on the Facebook groups, both the seasonal strategy and the thrift savings plan group, and that is a lot of confusion revolving around the 5% match. Um, in 2020, our contributions, our limit is increasing to 19,500 from 19,000 in 2019. Your 5% match from the government does not go against your 19,500. So, just to be clear, if you contributed $19,500 in 2020, which depending on your agency is approximately $750 a check, and you made $100,000 a year, the government would match $5,000. And so your total contribution over the course of 2020 with your 19,500 and the 5% match from the government would be 24,500. So again, you do not have to worry about doing that math. You just need to worry about 19,500, and the government will take care of the 5%. And if you are out there and you are not contributing at least 5% to your 401k, you need to do everything in your power to change that right now. That is free money that you're leaving out on the table, and makes a huge difference long term in your account. So that being said, let's go ahead and dive right in. You may have noticed also before we do that, my voice is a little bit scratchy, so I am fighting a cold. So I apologize if it's a little scratchy or screechy. So anyways, let's go ahead and take a look here. Okay, so I'm at the TSP.gov website. This should be familiar to most of you here. If not, take some time to explore here a little bit. So we're going to go to calculators here under planning and tools. And the calculator we're going to use today is the how much will my savings grow. And this is, you guys can spend quite a bit of time playing around here and adjusting different things and seeing how they affect your own individual situation. So I'm FERS, as I'm sure most people are. There's not very many CSRS individuals left out there. And we're going to start with a new employee, so future contributions only. So let's say our fictitious employee has 30 years to go, obviously, till his retirement. And I'm gonna use $100,000, and I know that that's not realistic for some of you, and I'm gonna show a little more realistic number later. But it's easy for me when I was doing my math, so that's what I used. So 100,000, and there are, I mean, and to be fair, there are plenty of people who make six figures in the government, not just executives, but it's not uncommon. So let's see here, weekly, and our individual is going to be saving 5% of his salary. So we're going to give him a 1% salary increase a year, and we're going to leave catch-up contributions alone. So in essence, with 5% of his own money, which is 5,000 of 100, and the 5% contribution from the government, this individual is putting $10,000 a year into his retirement. So we're going to set this to 30 years. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give us a baseline. And this is going to be what we compare everything else to. And we're going to use the average 10-year return of the G fund, which is 2.3%. Now, in the 80s and part of the early 90s, the G fund did have years where it returned some significantly better percentages. I think I saw one was like 8% one year. Those days are gone. The G fund hasn't returned anything close to that in quite a long time. And so less than 3% is something that you can expect from the G fund on a regular basis. I think we're at 2.03% year to date right now. So let's take a look at what our $100,000 a year employee would save over the 30-year career. So as you can see here, our employee saved $490,222. The big number here to take a look at is this growth of your future contributions. So $142,000 is what he was able to grow. That is just this is a scary scenario that I think a lot of people have fallen into this trap. I personally know individuals, family and friends who are in this position right now and getting into the later years of their life, and they're realizing now that that's just not enough money to retire on. $490,000 in 30 years is just not a lot. I mean, that's 5 times this person's initial starting salary, and you got to think that with a 1% increase a year, they're making about 135 grand or so at the end of their career, and 4 times your salary in retirement is just not enough to live on. It wouldn't be enough for me to live on, especially when you see what happens if you use more realistic numbers and you stay out of the G fund. So what we're going to do right off the bat here is we're going to change our scenario. And Mr. 100,000, he decided that he was going to run some kind of split that gave him an expected annual return of 7%. Now, 7% seems to be the universally agreed upon number to use when planning for your own retirement. It's a little conservative, especially in the last 30 years, but I think it's an important number to use because it's what a lot of financial planners and whatnot will use as when they're doing your own estimates and whatever, if you use such individuals. So let's see here. Our fictitious person now makes $1.078 million during the course of their 30-year career. And notice before, 147,000 or something like that, it was what it was. Now we've got a future growth of 730,000. This is significant. This is over double what they had in the G fund. And you might say, well, yeah, that makes sense. It was 7% versus 3 or 2.3, but really, this is the difference between retiring comfortably at your minimum retirement age and working until you're 65 or 66 years old. And at that point, a lot of people are getting past their physical ailments, medical stuff comes up, and really, I think it should be everyone's goal to retire as early as they can, as long as it's feasible, and so they can spend some time enjoying life on their own terms instead of somebody else's. So let's go ahead and do one more change here. We're going to show what happens and why contribution is so important. So our fictitious employee now, he's going to contribute 10% of his salary. Let's see what happens. Same percentage, $1.618 million. So remember, our 5% G fund employee was at $490,000, and now our 10% average equities employee is at $1.618 million. That is over 3 times the balance, just based on some simple contributions. I mean, if you look at an additional 5%, everybody let's see, 100,000. So that's an extra $400 a month. And for a lot of people, that's a lot of money. I get it. And so, my advice to individuals when they're looking at how to increase their contributions would be to, when you get a raise or you get a step increase or whatnot, is to take 50% of that increase and put it into your TSP. That way, it doesn't upset your monthly budget as much as just adding a giant chunk in there. Um, so that's that's the way I do it. I'm hoping to be maxed out in 12 months time, and I've been working towards that for a few years, and we're almost there. So we're gonna take a look at some more numbers here. All right. So the next scenario we're gonna go through is we're gonna kind of show that you don't need $100,000 to hit that magical million mark either. Because you may be saying, Travis, I don't ever see $100,000 in my future, and that's okay. We're going to leave those numbers the same, so we're going to have 10% as our annual contribution, and our Mr. Employee here is going to make $62,000 a year, so 40% less. He's going to maintain his 10% contribution, so he's contributing $6,200 a year, and everything else stays the same here. And look at that. Our $62,000 employee who left his money in the average equities return of 7% cleared the $1 million mark in 30 years. And that's pretty phenomenal. I mean, that's 17 times his base salary. And don't forget, he made over twice as much as Mr. $100,000 G Fund employee. And so everyone needs to understand that it's not impossible, but it's really important to start early. And so if there's any new feds that are taking a look at this, get involved early with your own retirement, because compounding interest is a function of time and money, and time is more important than money. So, all right. So, and now we are going to move into a little bit of a discussion about why it's important to beat the market. We're going to go back and look at our $100,000 man. Here. Let's change some stuff here. Here's our $100,000 man. And now we're going to take this, and we're going to beat our expected annual number of 7%. We're going to beat it by 1%. And let's see here. Now, this is going to kind of start showing why everybody's so obsessed with beating the market. So remember, he was at 1.6 million before, and now by beating it by just 1%, he has increased his balance to 1.938 million, and that is a increase of 19.8%. That's pretty significant. 1% increase in contribution or in an average market return increases your balance there by 19.8%. But here's what's kind of neat about that is, like everything associated with long-term investing and compound growth, is that this is not linear. You would only have, let's see here, so if you had, we're using that 7% as our base number, by the way. So if we lost 1% to the market, so we had 6 versus a market return of 7, you're only looking at you're looking at 1.35, and you're only looking at a 16.2% loss in balance from your original balance there of 7%, which is our what we're using for our baseline. Now let's go back here. We're going to change some more scenarios, and we're going to see what happens if we beat it by 2%. So that would be 7 plus 2, obviously, is 9. $2.33 million, which is an increase over our base of 44%. So beating it by 2% increases your estimated TSP balance by 44%. Those are significant numbers. Again, not linear. 19 times 2 is 38, so we're increasing. Now let's see what happens if we beat it by 3%. Now, this is an important number, the 10% number. 2.8 million for our 30-year, $100,000 employee. And the reason this number is so important is that 10% has actually been the average return for the C fund since 1988, which is the S&P 500. And so when you're looking at these numbers now, let's take a look. And this is a 74% increase by beating the market by the average projected market by 3%. Now, remember Mr. G Fund, and think about the quality of life increase that you could potentially be looking at, and really the amount of money that you lost. If somebody told you that over the course of your life, a single decision would have cost you $2.3 million, you might rethink how you think about your own retirement. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind when you're playing with this calculator, is to really kind of look about how much can I save and what will that do to my bottom line. So, and of course it continues. I've got one more scenario here, and I think I had it beaten by 4%. So let's look at 11, and this should be a 110% increase over your, this is 4% is the number you basically need. It's like 3.75 or whatever to double your balance. And so again, that's not a linear approach, and that's the magic of compounding interest. So thanks everybody. That kind of wraps up my thoughts today on how to use that calculator and why it's important to helping you plan for your own retirement. And in addition, I think it's important for everybody to really start looking at their own contributions and trying to do the best they can to continue to increase those, as we were able to take a look and see how much benefit there is to actually increasing your own contribution account and how that affects your end balance. So again, don't forget to subscribe below. Feel free to share with your friends, family, coworkers, or whatnot on Facebook. And we look forward to the next video. Thanks, guys.